Welcome back in. We are on to week 6. It is Sunday. We do not have Cody today because Cody is traveling to Pittsburgh with seeing some family there in the PA. So holding it down today. So let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of questions to answer. So if you got any of those, drop them into the chat. First things I just want to hit on because we have a lot of injuries to deal with this week. Not just buys that we have, but also injuries. I mean, just inactives. We have Rashad White, Jacoby Myers, Jonathan Taylor, Brian Robinson, Ramondre Stevenson, Devontae Adams, Taysom Hill, Malik Neighbors, Devin Singletary, Derek Carr, and Gus Edwards all ruled out already. In terms of the questionables, we'll have to monitor Christian Watson. Audric Esme is not that big of a deal. Khalil Shakir and James Cook. Now, the problem with those is they don't play until tomorrow, though it does sound like James Cook is supposed to play. He tested everything out yesterday and actually practiced yesterday. So it does sound like James Cook should play this week. But in the actives, I mean, a wild ride for Michael Pittman this week. Went from sounds like he was going to go on IR to now all of a sudden he's playing this week. So uh, he is expected to play. Joe Mixon is back. Anthony Richardson it looks like he's going to play. Josh Downs, Chase Brown, and Deontay Johnson are all expected to play. Kind of monitor the rest of anything else. If anything else pops up between now and 11:30 Central Time. So let's go ahead and get to some of these questions for the week. First up, we got Tyron Tracy, or Antonio Gibson, and then Love or Jalen Hurts. This is a tough decision. I understand why you're asking it. For me personally, I'm going to have Tyrone Tracy ahead of Antonio Gibson. I do like both of them as options. It's just not a great match, as good of a matchup for Antonio Gibson. Houston has actually been really good against the run this year. That's not really been their weakness. Their weakness has been, through the air. And so it does worry me a little bit here with Antonio Gibson, but he should still be involved in the passing game. They have Jermichael Hasty, which I'm not all that concerned with. When it comes to Tyrone Tracy, we saw how good he looked last week against Seattle. Phenomenal. I don't think he had a single carry of negative yards. The only thing that was, I guess, a little frustrating was he just wasn't involved in the passing game as much, which is surprising because he is a converted wide receiver. But this is a good matchup against Cincinnati. So I do like Tyrone Tracy here this week as a top 20 running back. I have Tyrone Tracy ranked 18th, and I have Antonio Gibson at 24. So I would go there. Now, in terms of the quarterback position, this is also a close one between Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love. I slightly lean towards Jalen Hurts. It does concern me a little bit just because of game script. Does this game, do Eagles just kind of manhandle the Cleveland Browns here? In their return. They do have AJ Brown back, Devonta Smith, so those are obviously big time positives. But I still would lean Jalen Hurts because of his rushing potential. I do like Jordan Love. Both are top 10 quarterbacks this week. Have Jalen Hurts though at 4 and Jordan Love at 7. So I would lean towards Jalen. I would lean towards Jalen Hurts on that one. Noel Conklin or Njoku. You know, the last couple of weeks we've started to see Aaron Rodgers really lean on Tyler Conklin here. And Joku, though, is back from injury. With this one, I probably lean towards what's tough. I would probably go Tyler Conklin here. I think game script sets up well. It's a decent matchup for Tyler Conklin. It is close. It's just the only thing that always worries me with Njoku is just Deshaun Watson is so bad and this offense looks terrible. So while I don't mind David Njoku, he is coming off an injury. I think I would probably just lean Tyler Conklin, a little bit safer of an option here this week. So next up, let's keep it moving here. So we have another question here from Noel: Dowdle, Dobbins, or James Cook, full PPR. This is going to be J.K. Dobbins for me. I actually like this matchup here. Kind of sets up well for game script wise against the Broncos. The Broncos defense has been really solid this year, but I do still like this matchup for J.K. Dobbins. We don't have Gus Edwards in this one. We could possibly be seeing Kamani Vidal here today as a name that maybe you might want to stash just in case to see how he looks. The coaching staff sort of talked about him in this situation, but I do like overall. I like J.K. Dobbins. I have him at RB17 this week, so I think he's a pretty solid RB2 for the week. And then lastly, we have Tolbert or Wandell, half point PPR. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Tolbert here. It is close but with Wandell, like he doesn't have a tremendous touchdown upside. I mean, his A dot is absolutely gross. They basically are just peppering him with, a lot of underneath targets. With this being a half point PPR, it's not as big of a deal. I think Jalen Tolbert has a higher touchdown upside. An interesting note, a little like breakfast narrative that we had a couple years ago with Cooper Cup and Matthew Stafford. But over the offseason, there were some beat reports out there that uh, Jalen Tolbert and Dak Prescott pretty much worked all offseason together, and that's kind of why we're seeing some of the emergence from Jalen Tolbert here. They have really good chemistry together. So I do like Jalen Tolbert here in this matchup. One of the highest totals on the slate against the Lions. You really can't beat the Lions on the ground. You beat them through the air. So just a really good, solid matchup here for Jalen Tolbert. KD 23, Pollard or Money at the flex. So this one for me is close. I really like both of these running backs this week. I think both of them set up really good spots. You can definitely run on the Cowboys. Cowboys have struggled all year to stop the run. Uh, and also, the Cowboys defense is just absolutely thrashed with injuries. They have so many players out from the defensive line. You got Demarcus Lawrence out. You have um, some of their secondary is out this week, so it's just Micah Parsons is out. So really like David Montgomery, but I also like Pollard. I slightly lead David Montgomery here just in this matchup. David Montgomery has just been rock solid, averaging about 17.4 PPR points per game. Tony Pollard's been good, though Tajay Spears is getting a little bit more healthy, though it is a really good matchup. Indy really struggles to stop the run as well. I really like both of these guys. I would love to be able to play both of them if I could, but I would just lean slightly towards David Montgomery here. I think he has just a little bit higher touchdown upside. JR, what's going on? Need help? Do I add Dowdle, Javante, or Gibson at running back? I have Kyron on a bye and Robinson is injured. This is tough. It comes down to Javante and probably Gibson for me. I probably slightly lean Javante. Again, Gabe Script kind of favors him. He's starting to tick up in terms of opportunities. The last couple of weeks, they use him a lot in passing game as well. It seems like a 13, 14% target share. So that's a positive. With this being a halfway PPR, like I've talked about with Antonio Gibson, I think Antonio Gibson is a decent play this week, but I just slightly lean towards Javante. I think he just has a little bit higher of a touchdown upside, and I have Javante at 19. Like I've already mentioned, I have Gibson at 24 this week. So I would slightly lean Javante Williams here in this matchup. Hopefully, he can finally find the end zone because that's really been the biggest problem for him this year. Is he just hasn't found the end zone yet? I do think it's coming. Also from Jr. Should I play Deontay Ridley Cooper over Jameson Williams in the flex? I'm definitely playing Deontay over Jameson Williams. I like Jameson Williams. Think he's in a good spot. He's a little bit more boom or bust though, where Deontay is obviously this team's number one target. Uh, Target share has been phenomenal for him since Andy Dalton has taken over. There's been some whispers that maybe they go back to Bryce Young, but I don't think it's going to happen unless Andy Dalton just looks dreadful again. But Deontay Johnson is just a really solid option this week. Top 15 wide receiver for me. I have met wide receiver 13 in this matchup against Atlanta. So not that I don't like, I actually really like Calvin Ridley as well. A nice bounce back spot. Cooper is super hard to trust because Deshaun Watson's been terrible, but I would play Deontay over James Williams in the flex. Next up, Mikey Conklin or Dalton Schultz. So this is an interesting one because if you look at the splits with uh, Nico Collins out, Dalton Schultz, his targets go up quite a bit. I like Dalton Schultz this week. I think I am much higher on him than consensus is. Most people um, aren't really all that high on Dalton Schultz this week just because of previous performance. He hasn't really done a whole lot so far this year. But I actually have Dalton Schultz. I have Dalton Schultz as tight end 8 this week, much higher than most consensus does. So I really like Dalton Schultz as an option this week against the Patriots. Like I said, no Nico Collins. I think it really helps Dalton Schultz this week. So as while Dalton Schultz hasn't been somebody you could probably play, I think this is the week you could definitely fire him up. So I'm going Dalton Schultz here. Bam first, Bucky versus Saints or Mixon versus Pats. It's pretty easy for me. It's going to be Joe Mixon. We saw. I know it's a really small sample size, but this team has wanted to be more run heavy this year, and they kind of have been. That's why we haven't really seen these monster performances from CJ Stroud like we saw last year. And the small sample size game that we have of Joe Mixon, He had like 28 touches, I think. This game sets up very similar to that. I know a lot of people love Bucky Irving. He's a really high owned player in DFS this week that a lot of people are targeting. I don't hate the matchup. I just question how much is he going to see a significant bump in usage? Is he all of a sudden going to go to a guy that's going to could see 20 touches? I don't know if that's going to be the case. He's not really built for that. I mean, he is only 190 pounds. I don't know if his role is going to change as much that people think. I think this team could still be a little bit more pass heavy. Now, where he could come in is being through the air, maybe sees a little bit more targets, but Joe Mixon probably sees, 20, 25 touches today. And so good matchup against the Patriots. So I'm going Joe Mixon. Really like Joe Mixon. I have actually bumped him up earlier in the week because I wasn't for sure if he was going to play. I had him as like a top 15 running back. Now I have him as a top 10 running back this week. Just really love Joe Mixon. I'm playing him with confidence. Next up is J.K. Dobbins or Jalen Tolbert. This is also tough. Full PPR here with this one. Like we've already mentioned with Dobbins, really like this. I also really like Tolbert. I think with this being a full PPR, Dobbins not really being that involved in the passing game, I'm gonna go J.K. Dobbins. I'm going back and forth here. This one's a tough one because I really like both of these players this week. But I'm gonna go with J.K. Dobbins, just a player who's probably going to see 15 to 18 touches, has a good shot to find the end zone. Uh, Coming off their bye as well. They also really good news for J.K. Dobbins this week is the return of their offensive line. Joe Alt is back. Now, the last time this team played against the Chiefs, they were out, and you saw the issues that caused. I mean, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt there on the offensive line have been phenomenal when they played. And that's earlier in the season, whenever we saw, J.K. Dobbins going off week in and week out, it was with those players. So those guys are back. So that is big news for this running game. So I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins here. Who's a better stash, Audric Estime or Kamani Vidal? Man, I think they're both good stashes. Audric Estime has a little bit higher of a ceiling to climb to be able to get there because Javante obviously is not going away. I don't see Audric Estime just taking the job away from Javante. And then you still have Jaleel McLaughlin. While that role is a little bit different, he's more of the pass catching back, um, or change of pace type back. I think it's probably Kamani Vidal, just because Gus Edwards is hurt. Gus Edwards has been terrible anyways, so we'd be kind of waiting to see if they would give the ball. Kamani Vidal was a player that a lot of people liked in the rookie draft process. This year, we've kind of been waiting and waiting to see if finally give him an opportunity. Now he's getting it, and honestly, he could have immediate value because I don't see the Chargers giving J.K. Dobbins like this monster workload. I don't think that's going to happen with his injury history and everything else. I don't think that's going to ever be the case. And so I do think Vidal, I think is the smarter ad because I don't see anything to happen this week where all of a sudden Audric Estime is going to be a guy who's going to just all of a sudden come in and see a bunch of touches. So I would lean Vidal here, especially with this the way the situation is playing out. Next up here, uh, TX Terry or Deontay. This is another good one because, like I've already mentioned with Deontay, really solid matchup. But I also really like this spot for Scary Terry, who finally is starting to pay off with the quarterback that they have there. I'm going to slightly lean Deontay Johnson here. Terry, I have at wide receiver 16. I just have Deontay a little bit higher. I think PPR format. He's going to get peppered with targets. There's not a lot in terms of anybody that's going to take touches away from him. Not that there's a lot there for Terry, but they've been using Terry a lot more as like a deep threat option here than somebody who just sees a ton of targets. So I know last week for Deontay was underwhelming, where he only saw three catches, 23 yards. But previous weeks prior to that, I mean, this is a player that saw 14 and 13 targets, just absolutely peppered with targets. And so this is a good matchup here. So I do just lean Deontay this week. Over on Twitch, Killa Quicks, Njoku or Likely full PPR. What worries me with Isaiah Likely is I know he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but he still only saw 3 targets. And really, since that week 1 monster game that he had, like that's pretty much all he's been seeing is 3 targets every single game. So it makes him really boomer bust. I don't think you can trust that he's going to be able to score, this kind of touchdown upside every single week. And so that does, obviously concern me a little bit there with this situation. So on this one, I probably would go David Njoku. I just think he has a little bit more clear path that he's going to be able to see more targets. We actually saw Mark Andrews last week see more targets than Isaiah Likely as well. So I don't love it, but I probably would go with Joku. I just think he probably has a little bit higher, I think he has a higher floor than what Isaiah Likely does. So I'm going to go with Njoku. Next up, Incognito, start one, full PPR, Darius Slayton, Tolbert, Slayton again. We just love him that much. We're going to put him twice, and then Romeo Dobbs. So with Slayton last week, what we saw is basically him playing the Malik Neighbors role, which is exactly what we saw. We saw a really solid target share in that game. Obviously, had a big game. We know he's capable of it. Um, Not a bad matchup against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense has just really struggled this year. They haven't been able to get pressure on anybody. They have like the third or fourth fewest sacks in the league right now, so that's been a big problem. And Daniel Jones actually last week on the road in a tough match and a tough place to play played pretty well last week against Seattle, who has a much better defense than what Cincinnati does. Um, that being said, I've talked about, I really want to get action on this Dallas and Detroit game. I mean, it has the highest total. This game could go absolutely nuclear this week in that game. Now it's possible that it's CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson who sees most of those opportunities and sees most of those targets. But I think I'm going to go with Jalen Tolbert. I really like Tolbert. I have him as a top 30 wide receiver. I'm at wide receiver 29. I do like Darius Slayton, but I just think it's a little bit more boom or bust with him. We've seen this before from him where comes out, he has a really big game, and then all of a sudden, the next week he kind of comes back down to earth. So this is the first time with him, but the 11 targets last week was really encouraging, 8 for 122 and one. But with that being said, I just still feel like I would probably lean Jalen Tolbert here in this matchup against the Lions. Declaring James Cook or Zach Moss. I'd probably still lean James Cook here. I don't love it. I don't love I don't love this matchup for James Cook. He's also dealing with an injury that worries me. Hate that. But so is Zach Moss. Zach Moss is dealing with, an ankle injury. So both of these players, I think I just go James Cook here. And he is a little bit more involved in the passing game. So that's a positive for him compared to Zach Moss. So I think I'm going to go James Cook and pray for the best. Just don't love the matchup here for James Cook, though. I will say that. Again, Romeo Dobbs or McConkey. So this is going to be Lad McConkey for me. It does scare me a little bit just because the Chargers have been so run heavy, and this game feels kind of gross. But Lad McConkey, when he's on the field, he sees like a 28% target share. I do think that you're probably going to see Sertan more on the outside, matching up with Quentin Johnston, where McConkey plays more into the slot. And so I think I would go McConkey here. Like Dobbs is just so tough. I mean, they have so many different pass catchers. Christian Watson possibly back, but obviously Wicks and Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft. I mean, there's just so many names here that are going to see targets. So I just go with McConkey here. I just think he makes a lot more sense. TX, which two to start between Evans, Olave, or Ridley and Chuba? This is tough because I'm probably not going to play Mike Evans. Maybe I'll regret it but he gets this matchup against Marshawn Lattimore, and Marshawn Lattimore has been his absolute kryptonite. I think he's only scored more than 12 PPR points like once or twice in the last 3 or 4 years that these teams have played. And so it really worries me with Mike Evans. I mean, it just feels like he gets into his head. And Marshawn Lattimore has just done a really good job of shutting him down. That's why I really like Chris Godwin so much this week, where I'm not as excited with this. And so I would go here, Olave. We had Spencer Rattler, who's starting this week, talking about how he's looking to get the ball to Chris Olave a ton. I kind of believe it. We typically see rookie quarterbacks really latch on to guys like this and really just hammer targets to them. So I do think this is a good bounce back spot for Chris Olave. And then I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard if he's the other option here at running back, because Chuba Hubbard has just been phenomenal. He's been a top 3 running back each of the last 3 weeks. So he's been really good. I think only Saquon Barkley has been better than he has. And just the usage he's seeing, good matchup. So I would go with Chris Olave and Chuba in this game. Is Anthony Richardson droppable in a 10 team, or should I not lose hope? It's really tough with him because he's been so bad as a passer. Like, and the really frustrating part is he's not really being utilized heavily through the passing game, or excuse me, on the ground. And that's kind of was the thing that we really wanted to see from him, and that's what we were so excited about with Anthony Richardson is because of this massive rushing upside, which he showed last year in limited sample size. But and I will say Anthony Richardson we just got that update. Looks like that. Looks like Joe Flacco might be playing here. I have to verify that. But either way, it's just tough because he just hasn't been very good. And I don't mind dropping him, but it really comes down to who you dropping him for. Like I'm not dropping him for anybody. If there's a viable option sitting out there in a waiver, and which I guess in a 10-team league there probably is, that's what I would want to know. But I would hate to drop him and then like he starts to figure things out over the second half, and then he comes into a monster again because we've seen it. I mean, we saw it last year. He has 30-point potential every single week. He just hasn't been able to get there. He's turned the ball over really high rate. And I wouldn't shock me if this team decided to continue to start Joe Flacco moving forward if this continues to happen, but I wouldn't bet on it. I mean, considering that's just a year removed from using a, what was it, top 5 pick on Anthony Richardson. But in terms of fantasy, yes, I think you can drop him depending on the option. Mikey Mooney or Downs, Flacco. Oh, so did they confirm that? I was trying to look. So Mooney, yep, no, you're right. Okay, yeah, I see that now. Joe Flacco is set to start. Man, that changes things a lot for this because Joe Flacco has been really good. I mean, even going back to last year with Cleveland, I mean, he's been so good. Michael Pittman is banged up. I know he's supposed to play, which I don't know. It's wild to me. And I do think so. L'Jarius Sneed has absolutely shut down every single wide receiver that he's faced this year, but I don't think that's going to be something they really utilize him on Josh Downs. But I really love Darnell Mooney. I'm going to go with Darnell Mooney here. I don't mind the spot. I do think it's a bump for all the pass catchers here for Cleveland or for Indianapolis to have Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson. But I have Darnell Mooney as a top 24 wide receiver this week. Just love this game environment. This game could actually be somewhat of a shootout. And so I'm going to go with Darnell Mooney here, who's just been really good so far this year. I think people are finally starting to come around on Darnell Mooney, who's somebody we talked a lot about in the waiver show every single week, that he should be rostered in a lot more leagues. But I have Darnell Mooney at wide receiver 22. I mean, we saw 16 targets. I don't think he's going to see that again, but he's seen 6 or more targets in every single game since week 1. I mean, so he's seeing a really solid target share. I'm just going to go with Darnell Mooney. I think that just makes a lot more sense to go with that this week. Despite I do like the bump for the Indy pass catchers with Joe Flacco. Not good at fantasy. Stream Mayfield, Danny Dimes, Goff, or Fields. Let's see. I'm gonna go with Baker Mayfield. I have Baker Mayfield at QB9 this week here against the Saints. So that's what I'm. Yeah, just gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Baker Mayfield here in this spot. I got Mayfield at 9. What were the other ones? Danny Dimes, Goff, and Fields. So I have Goff at 14. I have Justin Fields at 15 with this one, and Dimes at 17. So with Goff, what worries me with him always is just with him losing touchdown upside because of Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery. Once they get inside the 5, like they're looking to pound it in with their running backs, and so it feels like he's so boomer bust. Like last week he had a good week, but it's been few and far between because of their ability to be able to run the ball, and they're not going to have any trouble running the ball this week against Dallas. I mean, Dallas is just missing so many pieces here. But I mean, if you look at last week, Jared Goff, in week 4, the last time he played, excuse me, not last week because they were on bye last week, but the week before that, he was the QB4. But before that, he was the QB 19, 25, and 18. And so he's just a little bit harder to trust. So that's why I would prefer just going Baker Mayfield, who has just been really good this year. I mean, he has been a top 5 quarterback in 4 of the 5 games he's played in. The only game he wasn't against Denver, we know how good Denver's defense has been. So really good spot here for Baker Mayfield. So I would just start Baker this week. Yes, Ertz or Mark Andrews. So this is a good one because Zach Ertz is seeing like a solid target share, and this is actually a good schematic matchup for Zach Ertz. But the only issue with Zach Ertz is like he has no ability of anything yards after the catch. As soon as he catches it, he is going down, and he just hasn't really been that great. He hasn't scored a touchdown. Um, he has a couple of games where he scored 10 and 9 fantasy points, but he just hasn't been that phenomenal. Now, I will say this is a good matchup. Baltimore has struggled against tight ends this year, but and the other side is Mark Andrews, which we all know Mark Andrews hasn't been great. But again, I'm probably higher on him than consensus. I do think we're starting to see a little bit more of a positive regression here for him. He saw 5 targets last week, which matched his season high. Last week he had 10 fantasy points last week. He came really close from scoring a touchdown. I think he got tackled on like the 5 yard line. Had he got there, I mean, I think we'd be having a different conversation about Mark Andrews. So I'm starting to think that maybe this is a better spot. Maybe he's starting to get back to being more of Mark Andrews. So I have Mark Andrews at tight end 12 this week. So I would go Mark Andrews here um, over Zach Ertz. Mike Charles, PPR, Rico Dowdle, or Trey Tucker. With Jacoby Myers out, Trey Tucker does become more of an interesting play, but I'm still going to go with Rico Dowdle. Like we've seen Dowdle now really start to really take over this backfield. He's also being involved in the passing game. Trey Tucker just feels very boomer bust to me here in this spot. I know that they're missing players, but I just feel like Brock Bowers is going to see a massive amount of targets. So let's keep it moving here. Got a little super chat here. Sorry if I missed that. Justine Garcia, half point PPR, pick 3, Pittman, D Hop, Diggs, and Deontay. So I really like DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley this week. Just great matchup. Indy has really struggled to really stop anything this year. The defense has just not been great, especially through the air. I know it's Will Levis, and Will Levis at times, I really not at times, but pretty much for most of the year has just looked dreadful. Um, but I do think this is a pretty good spot for DeAndre Hopkins, who's kind of working his way back, who suffered that injury. I would go DeAndre Hopkins here, Stephon Diggs, and then I'm going Deontay Johnson. I'm guessing here. I know Pittman is a boost with Joe Flacco back, but I just don't trust that back injury. I'm not going to play him and then him go out there and play very limited, or he comes out and gets hit and at some point and then misses the rest of the game. I just can't trust. I personally own Michael Pittman in my own home league, and I'm not playing him this week. I'm just benching him just because I just can't trust him here. If he makes me pay, he makes me pay. But I'll also say I could also see L'Jarius Sneed just shadowing Michael Pittman as well because he's kind of the main player that you have to focus on here from this pass catcher core. And like I've said, L'Jarius Sneed has absolutely shut down everybody that's come his way this year. So that's the other kind of thing that really would worry me. So I would just go Hopkins, Diggs, and Deontay Johnson there. But I do appreciate the super chat there. Really much appreciated. Um, JR, you did say you like Deontay over Tolbert. Yes, I do. I do like I like both of them, but I do like Deontay Johnson, top 15 wide receiver for me this week. I do like him over Jalen Tolbert. Yes, that is correct. Jake Ferguson or Tucker Craft. This is a good one there, Ashton. It's still Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson is for me my tight end 3 this week. I have Tucker Craft tight end 5. But I do like Jake Ferguson here in this spot. Just been really, really rock solid. Still somebody that Dak Prescott looks for a lot. We've already talked about this game. Just one of the best game environments on the entire weekend here, but just seen really solid target share as well. 7, 7, and 11 target each of his last 3 games. And he's been the tight end 3, 7, and 8. And that's without even scoring a touchdown. So if he can find a touchdown this week, I mean, he's really going to easily be one of the best tight end plays. But for me, my top 5 tight ends, I had George Kittle at 1, who's already played, and then Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, Brock Bowers, and Tucker Craft. Here are my top 5 with Sam Laporta at 6. So um, I would go with Jake Ferguson here in that spot. And then Tone, start Olave or Deontay Johnson. I'm going to go with Deontay, or excuse me, I'm going to go with Chris Olave here. I already talked about it. I do think this is a good bounce back spot for him. I know he's been frustrating. I know Rashid Shaheed has really kind of taken away a lot of opportunities for him. Been able to score a lot of long touchdowns. It's a really weird game environments. so far early for this year as well for the Saints. But I'm going to go with Chris Olave here um, in this matchup. Ashton again, start two PPR, Devonta, excuse me, Shaheed, Sermon, Doubs, and Slayton. I'm definitely playing Devonta Smith for sure. Man, the rest of these three or four, excuse me. I don't really trust Trey Sermon here in this spot against the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans defense has been really good this year. Um, so I don't love this spot for Trey Sermon. And then you have Slayton and Shaheed. I probably still lean Shaheed. Shaheed in this one, I am lower on Shaheed, obviously, without Derek Carr. But they have been doing a lot to try to get manufactured touches into his hands. I do think you probably see them trying to get Spencer Rattler the ball out of his hands very quickly. With now the thing with Tampa Bay, we know that this defense is going to bring pressure. It's just what they do. But they haven't been very good at getting there. But I will say the thing that worries me the most with the Saints this week is the fact that they're missing two of their starting offensive linemen, Cesar Ruiz being one of them, and this is already an offensive line that's not great. And then losing both of those is a problem. So, but still, I do think you're going to see them try to do whatever they can to get the ball out of his hands. That's why I think Alvin Kamara is a great play because they're going to be looking probably dump down to him some. But I do think you can still play Shaheed here. So I'm going to go Devonta and Shaheed on this one. Dylan, need help. Full PPR, two flex. Alec Pierce, Dontavian Wicks, Rashad Bateman. I sort of lean Wicks and Bateman simply because I trust their quarterbacks more, and they should be more high scoring games. Flacco is starting. Yeah, Alec Pierce has been absolutely wild this year. Honestly, just and he's been doing it though. What worries you with Alec Pierce is the fact that uh, it's been such low target volume. Like he's not a player who's seeing like a massive amount of targets. And so that's the only thing that worries you with Alec Pierce is is simply that. I mean, if you look at as I mean what he's done, he's only seen more than 3 targets in one game this year. I mean, you have to go all the way back to the Green Bay game where he saw 7 targets. But he's been getting there. But he scored a touchdown 3 of 5 games. That has a lot more to do with anything. And then he's been able to haul in some long touchdown passes here. So that's the understanding. Like if you're going to play out Pierce, understand that that's what you're getting yourself into because he's probably not going to see his massive target share. And now you have everybody back. I mean, so it was looking like earlier in the week that Josh Downs and Michael Pittman weren't going to play, but now they all are, and so it just kind of lowers the excitement of wanting to play Alec Pierce here in terms of Dontavian Wicks. Christian Watson does sound like he's possibly going to be back this week. So if he's back, it kind of limits him. Um, I think I would agree. I think I probably go Wicks and Bateman though, because Bateman did see 8 targets last week. Now, what you want here for Bateman to be able to pay off is for the Commanders to come out and just get like an early lead. Like it doesn't have to be anything major, but like if they come out and score a quick touchdown, they hold them, then maybe they get a quick field goal. They're up 10-0. That's the game script you need because for this team to throw the ball. Because if they're able to build a quick early lead, this team is not going to throw the ball that much, and that's the frustrating part. Rashad Bateman becomes much more of a viable target option whenever they are in a trailing game script. I mean, look last week against the Bengals. That's why we saw so many pass attempts last week for Lamar Jackson was because of that. And so for me, I think I would agree with you. I think both these game scripts set up really nicely. So long-winded way to say yes, I agree. I would go Wicks and probably Bateman there. Quincy, Trey Tucker or Alan Lazard. I'm gonna go with Trey Tucker here. Just less at his way, but I don't really love the matchup all that much for any of uh the Jets the Jets pass catchers here in this matchup against the Bills. Bills defense has been really solid this year. Lazard wouldn't surprise me if he got there, but it's not something I'm definitely going to trust. But so I would go Trey Tucker here. Just a little bit less in his way. I mean, you're really talking about Brock Bowers in his way now because without Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers, I mean, it's not hard to see to get there. So let's keep it moving here, and then super flex. Oh, sorry, I missed this one. I appreciate. So at a super flex half point PPR, should I play Josh Allen or replace him with one of my wide receivers above? Well, we're already playing those 3, and I'm not playing Michael Pittman over Josh Allen, and I get it. Like, I've had people ask about Josh Allen this week, and it's tough because there's just isn't a great matchup. The Jets' pass defense has been absolutely, like, historic elite right now so far to start the year. Um, but the good thing always with Josh Allen is his ability to run the ball, be able to score touchdowns on the ground, and that's the way you have to hope for him to get there. Um, so I would still play Josh Allen. In a super flex, it's really hard not to play the quarterback that you have because of that. And it's still Josh Allen. I get it. I'm a little bit nervous, but I would go Josh Allen here. What just the rushing upside alone, I just think it makes it a good play. And then Jalen Warren or James Cook. Jalen Warren is back this week finally. I would probably still lean James Cook again. Kind of mentioned it. Don't really love necessarily love the matchup against the Jets, but they are worse against the run than they are a pass, for sure. And so I would go James Cook here, and hopefully he can put one in the end zone. Super Dave, morning. My roster is inactive. Cheers. Yeah, that's what it's looking like. It's tough in these streets with buys and then all these injuries that we continue to have. And really, it's not even that. It's the practice injuries that we're getting. Like, it's not even just all the injuries that we're seeing in games. I mean, it's been absolutely wild this year. How many injuries we've seen just through practice? Like, where all of a sudden you're just chilling, you think everything's good, you're sitting there going through your work day, and all of a sudden you get a notification that one of your players is all of a sudden now questionable, and so you have to go figure out what's going on because it's a Thursday. Why is this player all of a sudden now? And that's because they got hurt in practice. So it's just been a brutal year so far for injuries. Hopefully things, but what I will say, some of these players that have been hurt and been out are starting to come back. Like we're getting AJ Brown back this week. It's sounding like it's possible Cooper Cup could be back after their bye this week. Puka Nakua shouldn't be too far behind that. So hopefully we're starting to get some of these players back because it's been pretty frustrating out there. So Cody in the chat, first time caller, long time listener. Amari, Sutton, Dobbins, or Sermon, and Moss or Tracy. So that's Tracy for me. I've talked about it. Really love Tyrone Tracy. Again, nobody cares about my own team, but I am starting him myself today. In terms of the wide receivers, the wide receivers here, like eventually it's going to happen for Mark Cooper. Like it just has to happen at some point. And this is actually a good matchup. Like the Philadelphia pass defense hasn't been very good. They have not been very good about getting to the quarterback this year. They have not been a team that's put a ton of pressure on quarterbacks. But I just can't trust anybody with with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson just doesn't even look like he wants to play anymore. And they have been giving up 5.2 sacks per game. Their offensive line is extremely banged up. I know Amari Cooper's kind of almost got there, but it just makes it really tough to play him. And so if that, like I can't, like Cortland Sutton has looked better as well. Not a terrible matchup, but I'm gonna go with J.K. Dobbins, like I've already talked about. Really like the spot for him. Game script environment sets up really nicely. So I would just go J.K. Dobbins and keep it moving here. And I'm sure because of that, Amari Cooper will catch like a 40-yard touchdown today. To make me eat my words. But I just probability says it's this is probably still not going to be the week for Amari Cooper. So and then should I trust Josh Allen's competitive athleticism? Buffalo needs to win or play running back wide receivers. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with I already answered that one, but I am gonna go with Josh Allen there. And then trade JMO for Warren or Dowdle. I think it really depends on like what you're looking at here. What's your team like? Are you that desperate? Because I do think there's going to be a lot of weeks that you're going to want to play. Um, uh, uh, JMO. He is a little more frustrating, but I think it really depends on like if I had to make a decision, it's definitely Rico Dowdle. Just because it looks like Rico Dowdle is really taking over this backfield. I know the funny quote from Jerry Jones this week was is that they're saving him. They're saving Zeke. No, no, Jerry. Zeke is just washed. All right. Like I don't think all of a sudden we're gonna get this late resurgence from Ezekiel Elliott. I just think he's washed. So I do like Rico Dowdle. Yeah, Doug Peterson getting that axe 2 weeks. Yeah. This it's just embarrassing. This what this team has come. And a lot of it's just like Press Taylor, but I also have just wondered like it is has everything really passed them by? I mean, we kind of saw the same thing with Frank Reich, where they didn't really adjust to like the new way of the NFL and he kind of fell off. And it's starting to look like Doug Peterson could be the same. I mean, the Bears are absolutely torching torching the the Jaguars. So just a bit frustrating with there. But people who played Caleb Williams today are very happy. I mean, Caleb Williams, 218 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's also got there through the ground, which has been not 4 carries and 56 yards. So just huge week though for Caleb Williams. And if you started him, you are very happy to start your day. Ashley, start one: Spears, Watson, or Chase Brown. I'm going to go with Chase Brown here. I do like this spot here. I know he was questionable earlier in the week, but he's just as usually just kind of become like a 50-50 split between him and Zach Moss. So I would just go Chase Brown here. I set a trade for Marvin Harrison Jr., JMO, Spears, Conklin for Bijan, Algier, and Kraft PPR. He hasn't rejected it yet. I don't hate it. Like I don't hate that. Like if you're really good at wide receiver and like you can absorb that, like I think there's better days coming for Bijan Robinson, most more notably probably today against the Carolina Panthers, and you're kind of buying a little bit low on him. And then Spears, I think it's I think he was dealing with some injuries earlier in the season, so I think that has something to do with the fact that why he hasn't been as involved as we thought he was going to be. But yeah, I mean Tucker Kraft looks like he's legit. Like he's definitely the best tight end. Now you have Musgrave being placed on IR. Wouldn't surprise me though, because I did see that the Vikings released uh, Robert Tanyan, so he has the familiarity with this offense. Wouldn't surprise me if they brought him in. Not that he's going to be some big deterrent from Tucker Kraft, but yeah, Tucker Kraft looks like he might be a top 5 tight end option rest of the way. So if you can make that work, and like you're still really good at wide receiver, yeah, I love that for you. There. So I don't mind that whatsoever. PPR, tight end premium, Kraft, Rashid. Yeah, this is gonna be Tucker Kraft. Top 5 tight end, especially at a tight end premium. I'm definitely gonna lean the tight end on that spot. So just really love this matchup here for Tucker Kraft this week. Keep it moving, Quincy. Zach Moss or Antonio Gibson. I'm gonna go with Antonio Gibson here. Um, I still think it's not the best matchup, but he's going to be involved in the passing game. The only other option here that you're looking at is JaMychal Hasty for the Patriots. So, if their defense can kind of keep this game within check, I do think Antonio Gibson is a decent play. Obviously, we've seen him in the past be a starting running back. He has actually looked, really explosive at times when given opportunities this year. So, I would go Antonio Gibson here over Zach Moss. And then Tyjae Spears or Christian Watson. I'm gonna go with Spears. It's just with Christian Watson, the injuries that he's been dealing with, like, he's kind of even before the injury, he was still playing sort of like a part-time role. So I'm gonna go with Tyjae Spears. Just I love the matchup here against the Colts, so I would go Spears here on that. And then actually coming through, if you haven't already, we have an absolutely free Discord. It's absolutely free, no strings attached. We don't need anything from you. We're not trying to sell you anything. It's just a pretty solid community. A lot of conversation always happening in there. If you have questions, trades, whatever it is, looking for news, because usually within something happens, it usually gets dropped in the chat as well. So you can join right there. Like I said, click the link, absolutely free. Jump in. That's all. That's all it takes. So if you want to do that, we'd appreciate it. Or if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps the YouTube algo. We really appreciate everybody, and the growth we've had so far this year has been really awesome. And I will say you'll probably start seeing some of our content. We're going to try to start putting it out a little bit sooner. We've been putting it out like Wednesdays, Thursdays, and some of the stuff. We're going to try to put it out much sooner. See how it goes this week. So don't be surprised to see the streaming video that I do for kickers and defenses. That'll try to put that out tomorrow, and then we'll probably be putting out the start set stuff on Tuesday. So have to do what you got to do. So, anyways, keep it moving here. Boss man, other team flex, full PPR, pick one: Chuba, Connor, Diggs, or McLaurin. Oh my goodness, that's phenomenal. Only one of these too. Son of I really love all of these. I think this is the toughest one. It's the toughest one today. I'm gonna go with James Conner. I have James Conner slightly ranked ahead of him. Um, Wish he was more involved in the passing game, but still, I still have him as the RB10 this week. I have Chuba at RB13. It's just really hard to try to get him fit inside the top 12. There's just a lot of really good running back plays this week. So he's just outside of being an RB1 for me. I think it's really close between like him and David Montgomery, who I wanted as like a back end RB1 this week. But I would go James Conner here in this matchup, but that's tough because I would love to play actually all of these. I'm playing a lot of them in DFS. So on the follow up to your wide receivers, Lamb, Neighbors, Leggett, Odunze, H. and Singletary, my running. Yeah, so that makes sense. Start three wide receivers, two flex. Yeah, that makes sense. Trying to get another running back here within that group. I do think it makes you thin. Obviously, with Neighbors, missing. Surprisingly, his second week, like I think a lot of people thought he would have been back, especially with the injury happening on a Thursday. But you are a little thin at wide receiver once you make that move. But still, I think you have enough to do that. And also, the best buy right now is anybody on the Dolphins because it does sound like Tua is going to be back week 8. And so, if that's the case, I mean, you want to try to be buying. Jalen Waddle's probably the easiest of all of them to buy, but Tyreek, if you can buy him, Achane, if you can buy him, because this offense is obviously going to be a lot different once he returns. So for flex, pick one: Wandale, Jerome Ford, or Joe Mixon. I already talked about him. Love him a lot. Top 10, easy top 10 running back this week. So definitely Joe Mixon. And then Cousins or Dak Prescott from over on Facebook for Peter. So it's Dak Prescott for me. I have Dak Prescott at QB3 this week. It's Lamar, Joe Burrow, Dak, Jalen, and then Jaden Daniels for me. In my top 5 quarterbacks, but Dak just really love this spot. It's really tough to run the ball against the Lions. That's just something that they have been excellent at shutting down this year. And so I would go with Dak Prescott. I totally get it with Kirk Cousins here that I like him as well, but it's easily Dak Prescott. I want as much game environment as I can get on that game. Eric, stash Pop Douglas or Jalen Warren. I think it's probably Jalen Warren. I know I'm looking forward to seeing what Drake May looks like within this offense. Jacoby Brissett definitely wasn't it. Um, and so, but Jalen Warren just kind of had a rough start to the year with all these injuries and everything he's been dealing with. Even really going back to training camp. But I still think I would prefer Jalen Warren as much as this team runs. I think he probably gets more and more involved as the season goes by. So I do think it would be Jalen Warren. Though I will say, another player that I really like as a stash that I wouldn't be surprised if we talk about after this week is Jalen Polk, who's really been trending up. Went from being like a 50% route participation guy to the last 2 weeks has been almost a full 100% route participation. So Jalen Polk could be another benefit from Drake May taking over at quarterback. Danzel, Cooper, Eckler, or J.K. Flex. I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins. Talked a lot about him already, but really love the spot. I actually don't hate this spot for Eckler. And it's kind of interesting with Eckler because last week when Brian Robinson didn't really play much at all in the second half, Eckler actually played, I think, 3 of the 4 drives that they had, like all of them, and that's way more than what I would have expected. But we'll see what happens here. But I still think it's J.K. Dobbins for me that I would go with here at the flex. Michael Gill, pick one: Moss, Pickens, Shakir, or Mooney. I'm not playing with the options you have. I'm not going to wait and see what's going to happen with Shakir. I know he's supposed to be a little bit more of a game time decision. I would go with. I feel like it should be George Pickens, but just another wild ride with another Steelers wide receiver, just because of all the ups and downs. Though he did see 7 targets last week. He just hasn't really had a game where like you've been overly excited about playing him. I mean, his best finish was the wide receiver 23 against Indy, and then prior to that was week 1. He was also wide receiver 24. But it's been extremely boomer bust. Where Darnell Mooney's been a lot more reliable as a pass catcher. I think depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for ceiling, it's definitely George Pickens because we've seen it before where he could, have a monster game. I think if you're just wanting a safer option, I think it's Darnell Mooney. I personally probably would lean George Pickens because I'm always hunting for ceiling. But I would get it if you don't want to play him either. But it is a good matchup though, for sure. Start one running back, two flex, Chuba, Bucky, Mixon. So it's Mixon easily for me at running back. And then I would flex Garrett Wilson and Chuba Hubbard is what I would do. Hey, a full PPR flex, Zach Moss, Flowers, or McLaurin. I'm gonna go with Zay Flowers. Again, really hope this as long as this game can stay a close, back and forth type game, I think that really benefits Zay Flowers. Again, whenever this team is able to get an early lead, it's really bad news for all their pass catchers because they're just not going to throw the ball as much. So, kind of hope for early game script. I do like McLaurin as well. Would love to be able to fit him in. Both of these guys are top 20 wide receivers. I have just Zay Flowers at wide receiver 14 and McLaurin at 16. So, just slightly favored towards Zay Flowers. Chargers or Broncos this week. Let's see. So I have the Broncos at 5, and then I have the Chargers at 6. Broncos defense has just been absolutely phenomenal this year. Just absolutely phenomenal. Uh, just getting a ton of pressure. I think they're top 2 or top 3 in sacks. Turnovers have been really good for this team. They scored a defensive touchdown, I believe it was last week. Patrick Surtain returned one, so it was either this week or the week before. But anyways, I would just lean slightly towards the Broncos. Debro, full PPR, two wide receivers, one flex, London, T. Higgins, Marvin Harrison, Deontay Montgomery. So the two wide receivers I'm going to go with are Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. My goodness. I want to play all of these players. So London and Marvin Harrison, then I'm going to flex David Monk. I would hate to have this situation every week trying to decide between all these because these are such good spots for all of these players. Because it comes down to Deontay and Montgomery, but with it being a full PPR and Montgomery not really being that involved in the passing game, I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson. Yeah. I mean, is James Cook playing? It does sound like he's going to play. I would want to have maybe another spot, like maybe if you have like a Ray Davis or something like that sitting out there, maybe you add him just in case there's something were to happen between now and then. But it does sound like he's expected to play. He wasn't able to practice yesterday, so where it was sounding kind of iffy, it sounds more likely that he's going to play. So, though I would, like I said, like because we're gonna have to wait to see if Ray Davis was sitting out there. I think maybe you add him just in case. Yeah. T. Higgins or Scary Terry. I'm going to slightly lean towards Terry here. I do have again we talked about this. I have Higgins as a top 20 wide receiver as well, but I have Terry ahead of him. I have let's see, where do I have Higgins? I have McLaurin at 16, like I mentioned. Where do we have Higgins? Oh, sorry, I have Higgins at 18. So really close there between the two of them, but I would lean towards Higgins, just the number one wide receiver. Jerome Ford, Dowdle, or James Cook. Pick two running backs. Worry James Cook might not play or be limited. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. It is a tricky situation because there's also the scenario where you don't play him and then all of a sudden he has a really good game. Because the Jets are more sustainable to give up points on the ground than they are through the air. It's not really a game environment that I feel like it's really going to run away from each side one way or the other. I don't really love this for Jerome Ford, but it does make a little bit more sense, especially if this game environment against the Eagles, um, where it's likely the Eagles are going to be playing ahead, so that does make things a little bit more intriguing for Jerome Ford. I would still probably go Dowdle and James Cook. If you're concerned with it though, then just go ahead and go with Jerome Ford. Like I don't think there's that significant of a difference. Like I don't have Jerome Ford or excuse me James Cook ranked all that high this week. Even before the injury stuff, I really wasn't as excited about playing him. I have James Cook at RB 22 right now. So where I have Jerome Ford just behind him at RB 27. So I mean, I I don't hate it. And like I said, I mean, trust your gut. If your gut's telling you to go with, to not play James Cook, then sit James Cook. Will Mizzou finally got back on track yesterday, 45-3. Not gonna it doesn't really matter if it's against UMass or anything, but they got the dub. So good news there. But pick one, flex. Chase Brown, Javante, Josh Downs, or Ty J Spears. I'm gonna go with see. I'm gonna go with Javante here. I have Javante just ahead of him. Javante RB19, Chase Brown, um, just below him. So I'm gonna go Javante Williams here. I got the Bears D for the Chargers this week. Yeah, I would have thought that, especially, kind of looked like the Jaguars offense was maybe starting to figure a few things out. Obviously, not the case. And of course, the worst thing I think ever about this whole situation is that Gabe Davis continues to see targets from this team. Um, Gabe Davis has always been bad, and it's just super frustrating with the Jaguars to see Gabe Davis come out here and then all of a sudden Brian Thomas was only 2 for like 20 today or whatever it is. But whenever you can feed Gabe Davis, you have to do it. I do hope, though, I will say that I hope that they just clean house on their way home, because something needs to change with this team. This team has just been dreadful. So uh, Doug Peterson looks like time has passed for him. Press Taylor is a terrible offensive coordinator, just awful. So I wouldn't be surprised if on this game from London the second time in as many weeks, with Robert Saleh being fired and then seeing the rest of us get fired, because the way that they're utilizing a lot of their assets is just absolutely ridiculous. So TS, Mixon or Connor PPR. Can we play both of them? TS. Uh, you have two. I mean, these are two top 10 running backs, but I'm going to go Joe Mixon here in this spot against the Patriots. So, because the only thing that would concern me with Connor is if they fall behind quickly, because Connor's just not really involved in the pass game. But one thing that goes in his favor is that Drew Petzing is just in love with running the ball, and it doesn't matter how far they fall behind; they're going to continue to run the ball. And it's like just ridiculous, especially with you have Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, and they won't open things up. They're a little bit more slow pace. So, but I would still go Joe Mixon. Marlon, hey man, start three: Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Bucky, Chase Brown. So this is easily Saquon. Love Saquon this week. Really good spot against Cleveland, and then I'm gonna go with Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs here. All three top 8 running backs. ET currently have Mike Evans, my wide receiver too, but not liking the matchup. Other wide receivers are Cooper, McConkey, JMO. Is there anyone you consider swapping Evans out with? I mentioned at the beginning. I don't know if you were in here, but with Mike Evans, I believe it's has Mike Evans hasn't. I think he's only scored more than 12 PPR points once in the last like 3 or 4 years against Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore just had his number, but it's tough. I mean, I would say you could consider Amari Cooper, but this offense has been so bad, and then McConkey, just really gross game environment. Feels like it's going to be like a 17-13 type game. So don't necessarily love that. And then I'm not sure if this is Javante Williams or Jameson. Well, you said other wide receivers, so that makes sense. Not Javante. It's Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is probably the one that you could probably consider the most because of the ceiling that he provides, that he has, but he can also be boom or bust. I probably still, in this situation, probably still go Mike Evans and just hope for the best that maybe he could find the end zone, because it is something that Baker Mayfield looks for in the end zone. Um, so I probably would go there. But if I had to make a decision, I would probably roll the dice if you're wanting to, and just take the plunge. I think Jameson Williams would be the other option. You really look at. Bills or Colts DST from Ashton. Let me look here. I'm gonna go with the Colts. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Colts here. It's tough. You just have to hope that this isn't the week that all of a sudden Will Levis finally figured things out here, because Will Levis has been a turnover machine. I think he's has 6 turnovers already this year. in as many games. They've already had their bye week too. He's also been sacked at one of the highest rates in the league as well. I think the Titans are allowing like almost four sacks per games to as well. So that's what I really like about the Colts. So I would probably go with the Colts here. Ryan, Javante, Ladd, or Wicks in the flex half point. So this being a half point PPR, I'm going to go with Javante Williams. I think he finally finds the end zone in this game. So yeah, so I would go there. Emmy, do I drop Ford for Ray Davis? Is that the worst option you have? Like, is there because like we do have to? So we haven't really mentioned this, but uh the Browns beat reporters today came out or yesterday, I think it was, said Nick Chubb is expected to return next week. So that is something definitely to keep in mind. Not that I'm overly excited about Nick Chubb, but it's just another situation here. Like I think if you had to drop Jerome Ford, you could. Like if you're, especially depending on where you're at. If he's the worst option you have, then sure, I think you could do it just in case. Um, because obviously you're gonna have to make a decision before that, and you want to safeguard yourself. I believe you're the one that had James Cook, and so I told you you can look at Ray Davis, and so I would rather save myself, especially if if you're not in a good spot and you definitely need to win. Um, I'm perfectly okay with doing that if that's the worst option you have. Going back, I'm starting Saquon Jacobs and Mixon, but I'm thinking about putting in Bucky Irving just to be safe because Joe Mixon returning from injury and has not played in a while. They've been pretty conservative with Joe Mixon. They've said that he is 100% ready to go. He's going to play his full workload. There's no concern whatsoever. So that's why I'm not concerned with that. If you want to do it, fine. If that's like I said, like I don't blame you for it. People are a little bit more or less risk averse, but I think with the way they've kind of handled him and kind of held him out to this point, I would suggest that he's probably pretty close to being 100% ready to go. There really was no, especially in a matchup like this against the Patriots. Like you really should be going into this game feeling like you could beat the Patriots with or without Josh Jacobs or without Joe Mixon, excuse me. So I would bet that he's 100% ready to go. So, but if you want to go with Bucky Irving, I don't blame you for that at all. Jose, Chase Brown, McLaurin, or James Cook. I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin here within this spot. Finally gets to play Terry McLaurin, but really like the spot here for him. Can Odunze get in this touchdown party on face? Yeah, it's been and Swift. Yeah, it's just been an absolute disaster here for the Jaguars once again. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully they can. Rashad White is out today, so Bucky will have all the carries. I don't think that's going to be the way it's going to go, or not to that extent. I don't know if his role is going to change that much. Like, he's definitely going to see a bump, but like I wouldn't be projecting that he's just going to be like this huge workhorse now with Rashad White out. Remember, Bucky Irving is 5'9", 190 pounds. I don't think that he's going to see that. They have Sean Tucker, who has kind of flashed a little bit at times. Had that really nice kickoff return, I think, a few weeks ago, or last week or the week before. Sean Tucker's obviously a much bigger running back, 220-pound running back that Sean Tucker is. I think Sean Tucker's going to mix in. I think Bucky Irvin's a good play, but I also don't think that he is somebody that's going to see 20 plus touches today. And if they get out ahead and they don't need to throw the ball as much, if that's something that happens, it does limit it. So, but he scored 5 points for me so bad, so I'm stretching to get the right start to have a chance to win. I think the highest ceiling player you have is Joe Mixon. I mean, so let's just again, I'll say it's small sample, but with Joe Mixon, right? Let's see. So, I mean, Joe Mixon looked phenomenal. Obviously, in the week one against Indy, he had 30 carries, 159 yards, was also targeted 3 times, scored a touchdown, 24 fantasy points. Now, he got hurt the next week, so he didn't have obviously as much, but he still was on his way to a pretty solid performance in that game where he had 14 total touches, or excuse me, 12 total touches and 50 yards that game. But that was against Chicago, and then he went out with an injury during that game, so he didn't play the full game. But this is a player that easily is going to see 20 touches. They're missing Nico Collins. They don't have as many pass catchers, so Mixon's likely going to see some targets. Again, if that's what your guy's telling you to go with Bucky Irving, go Bucky Irving. Like it's kind of like what I said. Like, I get it. I get the apprehension to play a player who's coming off injury, but like I said, I feel like with the way they've handled the situation, what the coaching staff has said this week is that he is ready to go, that he is going to be a workhorse, that he's going to have no limitations whatsoever. I know what I can expect from Joe Mixon. Bucky Irving in this role is a little bit more concerning. So, and let's not roll over on the Saints defense. I mean, the Saints defense is not bad, and it is in Tampa Bay, or excuse me, it is in New Orleans as well. So that's my concerns with Bucky Irving. I just don't know how big of a jump we're going to see in terms of usage with Rashad White out. So that would be my concern. But I get it. Anthony, you think? Yes, I think he's going to play full snaps. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see a scenario where they bring him back and they're like, okay, we're just going to limit you. I don't think that's the case. I think they want him to be their workhorse. That's what they said this week. That he is going to return to that role. That he is without limitation. So that's all I can go off of, right? Like I can't. If something changes other than that, then that's fine, But I just don't want to be the player who like, oh, I'm going to sit him because I'm afraid he's not going to play a full amount. But regardless, even if he doesn't, it's still a great matchup. Like it's not. I would be floored if the Patriots came out and just like throttled the Texans or something like that, to where he's not, involved. That would be surprising. Daryl, hey bro, good morning. Should I start Gibson or Chase Brown? I slightly lean towards Chase Brown, but it's kind of a. I would have felt way better about it if Zach Moss was out. But with Zach Moss being there, that does concern me a little bit. But I will say Chase Brown has looked really good the last couple of weeks. This is I will say with Antonio Gibson, while he's going to be the starter, he's going to be the one that plays all the snaps. The Texans have been really good against the run. That's something they've been very, very good at this year. That you've wanted to throw the ball against the Texans. It's not necessarily on the ground. But that being said, I would slightly lean towards Chase Brown. So that being said, oh, got to get to Kanoa here. Keith Johnson, I'm assuming that's Quentin or Jacoby Myers rest of season. Thanks. I would go with Jacoby Myers. Don't really love it for either one of them. Kind of gross offenses. But now, there's a situation when, now all of a sudden it's coming out Devontae Adams may not be traded. I don't know if they're doing that as some sort of leverage against teams because they're not really getting um, the package of the thing. It should them asking for a second round pick for a 32-year-old wide receiver who has due a lot of money over the next couple of years. Oh, and they want teams to eat all of the money, so they're not having to carry a lot of money. It's just ridiculous to me. I don't see where they get. I would be floored if a team wanted to give them a second round pick. I could see a third round pick, but anyways, I would lean probably still Jacoby Myers. Hopefully, Aiden O'Connell can be an upgrade over what Gardner Minshew was. Yeah, good luck to you this week, Kanoa. Hopefully, you are doing well. Anthony Gibson or Lad at flex full PPR. I would probably lean towards Gibson. Obviously, we know Gibson is a very good pass catcher out of the backfield. Just a player who's going to see a lot of touches in his backfield today. I like Vlad too as a solid flex option, but I still think I would lean Antonio Gibson. Calvo, what's up? Start one. JMO, Downs, or Cooper. Cooper's going to be the death of me. I'm telling you. But I still am going to go with Jameson Williams. Love the game environment. Still more boomer bust, but man, Cooper. It's not him. It's Deshaun Watson. But until they decide to bench Deshaun Watson, and it sounds like it's Jimmy Haslam who doesn't want to bench Deshaun Watson because they're just paying him all this money and they're going to get the money out of him. So I it's frustrating because and hopefully he just gets traded over the next couple of weeks. There's been a little bit of talk about him getting traded to the Chiefs. That would make sense because that is a great option. Like I've seen all the stuff about the Chiefs of Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. None of those are going to happen. Chiefs don't have the kind of money for that. And that is just not a move the Chiefs would make. But Amari Cooper would make sense because he only owed $1.2 million as a free agent after this year. So I do think that that one makes a little bit more sense. But hopefully that happens because we need to get Amari out of there. It'll Kanoa, Tracy, or Eckler. I think I've had this one already. Went Tracy. Going to continue to do so, though. I do think there's some scenario where Eckler's a little bit more involved. Because at first I didn't think that his role was really going to change all that much because of his age, injury history. But last week, once Brian Robinson went out, I think he played 3 of the 4 snaps last week, or 3 of the 4 drives. Excuse me. Once Brian Robinson sat out the rest of the second half, but I still would go with Tyrone Tracy here. Trade Bowers and Shakir / Charbonnet for Josh Allen, Kincaid, have Richardson. It's tough. Like Josh Allen, obviously, is an upgrade over Anthony Richardson, but Brock Bowers looks like he's going to be either probably a top 2, top 3 tight end the rest of the season. Kincaid hasn't been that. Kincaid's been really frustrating. Um, Shakir and Charbonnet is whatever to me. I don't really care about that part of it. I just don't really want to trade such a advantage that you have with Brock Bowers. I think you'd be better off you could probably stream the quarterback position versus getting Josh Allen over losing Brock Bowers. I think that's the way that I would go. And I wouldn't make that trade. Over on Twitch, Elio Ho, everyone, what defense is a good start today? It really depends on. It's hard to say without knowing who's available in your league. But the ones that we hit on this week in terms of the waivers or streaming options this week were the Eagles. Definitely love that matchup against Cleveland. Cleveland's allowed over 5 sacks per game. Houston Texans against the Patriots, like the spot. Obviously, you're getting a rookie Drake May starting. So the Texans definitely are somebody you could look at. The Broncos, the Chargers are good and both good spots. The Bills, if somehow they were sitting out there, though I doubt it, would be out there. And then the Bucks are another one that people are looking at this week, just because of Spencer Rattler starting for the Saints. I think is another one you could look at. But I think those are the ones that make the most sense that are likely available. Jose halfway PPR, Cook, McLaurin, Higgins, or Chase Brown. This is going to be Terry McLaurin for me, just slightly. I do like McLaurin over Higgins just slightly. I have McLaurin at 16 and T. Higgins at 18. So, yeah, no problem. So that being said, we are at 11:30. This is where we usually try to get off here. Try to get a few more lineups built for DFS. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Kanoa, definitely can't leave you out in the cold, our guy. So we're gonna go with Dak here. Got Dak as QB3 this week and Jordan Love at QB7. But that being said, we'll be back in tonight for the waiver show. Get all your waiver questions answered for the week. And hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Hope everybody has good. Let's get those W's this week, week 6. And we'll see you tonight for the waiver show. Hopefully injuries are at a minimum today. We don't need a bloodbath again at injuries. We've had enough. Can we just have a smooth week for once where we don't have a bunch of injuries? We'd appreciate it. The fantasy gods, if you hear us, help us out a little bit. We need the help. So that being said, have a good rest of the day. Have a good week. We'll see you on the next one.